सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तं वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्।
गुरुपरम्परम्।
ॐ सहना
ॐ
भवतु
सहना
सहनौ
भवतु
भुनक्तु
सहनौ
सह वीर्यं
भुनक्तु
करवावहै
सवीर्यं करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै।
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
ॐ
विद्विषावहै।
शान्ति शान्ति
ॐ शान्ति
शान्तिः।
शान्ति शान्तिः।
Okay, Arvindji, would you look at the 11th Anuvaka and you can start from Ye Tatra Brahmanaha Samarshinaha. So that's on page 22 of the Mantra Pushpam, the 22nd paragraph.
Yes, Raviji. Om Ye tatra brahmana asammarshinaha yukta ayuktaha aluksha dharma kamasyuhu yatha te tatra varteran tatha tatra vartethaah athabhya akhyateshu ये तत्र ब्राह्मणा आसम्मर्षिणः युक्ता आयुक्ताः अलूक्षा धर्मकामा स्युः यथा ते तेषु वर्तेरन् तथा तेषु वर्तेथाः एष आदेशः एष उपदेशः एषा वेदोपनिषत् एतदनुशासनम् एवमुपासितव्यम् एवमुचैतदुपास्यम्.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we saw part of this earlier. We are talking about what to do when we have doubts regarding the time, the place, and what we should do. So he had said that ye tatra brahmanaha sammarshinaha. That look at those brahmanas, those elderly respected people, and Shankara adds over here tasmin kaleva desheva. It's at the time and place where you have a doubt. Look at people who are in that time and that place. So Veda is saying, go to a brahmana, and once having gone to the brahmana, and make sure that he is a guna brahmana. We are not talking about jati brahmanas. And Shankara gives the meaning of sammarshinaha. He says vicharakshamaha. Vicharakshamaha means, kshama here means the capacity, the capability. So vicharakshamaha is the capacity to analyze the Veda and specifically take the Vedic instructions, the Vedic Vakyam, and analyze it in the context of the modern times or the changing times. So essentially, how I can, without changing the tatparyam of the Vakyam, how I can adapt it to changing times. So that's what he's saying, that Brahmana should be such a person who is capable of making that interpretation. And not only that, yukta ayuktaha, with those changed interpretations, he practices also. And alukshaha dharma kamasyuhu. Aluksha, we said that these people are thinking people. This acharya should be a thinking person who is not blindly bound by the words of the Veda. He is flexible because he considers that dharma is also a very important aspect, important purushartha. And he has understood the importance of dharma in the creation of adrishta punyam and papam. And this man is free from desires. Then only he can give you an unbiased opinion, unbiased interpretation. So, and then what did the Veda say? Yatra yatha te tatra varteran tatha tatra vartetha. Yatha te tatra varteran. In whatever manner those brahmanas are conducting themselves, tatha tatra vartetha. In that manner also you should do. In Vedic society, we are saying that once an authority has given an interpretation of the Veda in the traditional manner, that interpretation itself is taken as unquestionable. We say it is as good as the original Vakya. Then the next word here is Atha Abhyakhyateshu. Okay. So we know ourselves that very often, and more often than not nowadays, there is an attempt to tarnish the image of people who are teachers. And so here he is saying that if a person is accused by society of some behavioral problems, say some immoral activity, immoral behavior, but they have not been proved guilty, only the accusation has been made, such people are called abhyakhyata, a person who is accused but not proven guilty of anything. So generally accusation has been made for whatever reasons, for vested interests, but there exists no proof. But the person's name is now called into question because a lot of people have made an accusation. In that case, what should you do? Should you still follow that person's instructions? Should you still consider that he is a Brahmana? That is the question which is being asked over here. And Veda says, Teshu cha. With regard to such people also, what should you do? You should take them as innocent. You should take them as not guilty, innocent of all wrongdoings, and follow the instructions exactly as if no such accusation had been made. And therefore, the entire set of instructions you can see is again repeated. Etatra brahmanaha sammarshanaha yukta ayuktaha aluksha dharma kamasyu yathate teshu varteran tatha teshu vartetha. So you must continue to behave exactly as you would have behaved had the accusation not been made. Why? Because it's only an unproven accusation. So continue to associate with those people and do exactly what they are doing. And therefore he concludes with Esha Adeshaha. So Adesha here means Vidhi, the instructions. Esha Adeshaha, all these instructions given in the entire chapter, in entire Shiksha Valli, and especially in this last Anuvaka, the 11th Anuvaka, they are the Vidhi. They are the Niyata Vihita Karma, the commandments of the Veda. And also he says, Esha Upadeshaha. So, Esha Adeshaha means these are the instructions given by the Veda, and Esha Upadeshaha, given by whom? The Shruti doesn't say. So, Shankaracharya adds, Putradibhya Pitradinam api. Instructions given by Pitra, etc. Fathers, forefathers, mothers, acharyas. These are the same instructions. Esha Upadeshaha, given by your father, given by your mother, given by your acharya. These instructions are the same as Esha Adeshaha, the instructions given in the Shiksha Valli of this particular Upanishad. So Shankara is saying that all these elders, your father, mother, acharyas, they give instructions based on Shruti only, and therefore these instructions can be taken as the Vedi. So Smartha Karma, he says, can be taken. Note here that there's a neat distinction which has been brought about. Upadesha is what? Upadesha is given by your father, mother, acharya, etc. So it's being classified as non-Vedic, right? Adeshaha is equal to Vidhi, Shankaracharya said. So there is a set of instructions given by the Veda itself. That is called Adeshaha. In other words, that is called Shrautaha, coming from the Shruti. And the definition of Smartaha, though we generally say that Smartaha is also, it means that those which are other than Shruti, that is in the Smritis, remember the real definition of instructions are any instruction from a valuable source, from a source which should not be questioned, which is not Shruti, should be taken as Smartaha. So here, neat distinction is brought about. Adeshaha is Srauta Vidhi. Upadeshaha, which includes instructions from your forefather Acharya, they are Upadeshaha. They are Smartha Vidhi. Adeshaha is Srauta Vidhi. Upadesha is Smartha Vidhi. Okay. Then Esha Vedopanishad. So these are the essential instructions of the Veda Purvam, known as Dharma Shastram, which are what? Vidhi Nishedaha, what is to be done and what is not to be done. So Krishna also refers to this. Where does he refer? I keep saying Bhagavad Gita should be the tip of our tongues.
Is it the 16th chapter last word? Tasmat Shastram Pramanam
Tasmat,
Te?
very good. That's a reference. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te Karya Akarya Vyavastitau, 1624. Okay, so that's what he's referring to. Etad Anushasanam. Now the question is, he has said Upadeshaha, he has said Adeshaha. And if Adeshaha is the Shruti statement and Upadeshaha is the Smriti statement or the statements of the forefathers and the Acharyas, why does he say Anushasanam? So Anushasanam then becomes a repetition, error of repetition. So Shankara says Anushasanam should be taken as Ishvara Vachanam, the Lord's words. And with this clarification, Shankara is pointing out that the Shruti commandments, the Vedic commandments, basically are those of Ishvara only. So he is pointing out the apaurushaya nature of Veda, pointing out the fact that the Vedic statements are not from human hands, human minds. And therefore it is pramanam, as valid as my sense organs, because they cannot be proved or disproved by any other praman. Okay. Now the question is, why does Shankara take the meaning of Ishvaravachanam? Because and Shankara gives clarification over. He says Adesha has come already. The word Adesha already came. It was translated as Vidhi. And if you take Anushasanam also as Vidhi, then it is what we call Punarukti Doshaha. And therefore he translates Anushasanam as Ishvaravachanam, the words of the Lord only. Lord Brahmaji in this case. And then Evam Upasitavyam. Upasitavyam means in this manner, what should we do? All the discipline should be followed. Upasitavyam. Upasitavyam here is not meditation, it is kartavyam. It should be done. And then, therefore, evam upasitavyam, in the manner in which all the instructions have been laid down in the entire chapter, in that way only the discipline should be followed. And again he says, evam cha tad upasyam. Upasyam again means you should follow, you should implement that. So upasyam should not be taken as meditation here. Upasyam should be taken as implementation. And they should never be given up. Shankara adds that very specifically. Upasyam na anupasyam. Should never be given up. And why was it repeated again? Shankara says it is repeated for the purpose of emphasis only. And therefore, with this, the 11th Anuvaka is over. Okay. Now here, normally in a Moolam class, this ends. Anuvaka ends. There is another Anuvaka, of course, which is the last one of this chapter, which is the Shanti Mantra that we will come to. But before that, Shankara enters into a very, very elaborate discussion. In the Bhashyam, it is a very elaborate discussion. I won't go into the Sanskrit part of it. I'll briefly try to capture the whole idea. Okay. Because it's a very, very important idea which we should all know. Nothing new. We have discussed it several times. And the purpose of the discussion is to establish that moksha cannot possibly be a goal. It cannot possibly be a sadhyam. And moksha is something which is already there. To establish moksha as a siddha vastu, something which is already existing, and therefore destroying the concept of moksha as a sadhyam, as a goal. Okay. Now, having said that, in the beginning stages, since we will be talking to ajnanis who are on the path, so basically people who are karma yogis are the persons being addressed by karma kanda. So in the beginning stages, it is of course necessary to say that all that you are doing, all the karma yoga, upasana yoga, are all sadhana. And the moment you say sadhana, you have to talk about the purpose of that sadhana, which is the sadhyam. And therefore, at the beginning stage of spiritual teaching, spiritual education, you have to tell the beginners who are karma yogis that this sadhana that you are doing has the goal of moksha. So sadhyam is the moksha. In fact, that idea is the very foundation of karma yoga. Right? If you are a karma yogi, you have to be doing sadhana for the purpose of chitta shuddhi, and then you will come to jnanam. All those things are there, and therefore you have to say that moksha is going to be a result of all these efforts. So for a karma yogi, moksha is presented as a goal to be achieved. But when that stage is over, and all of you are now advanced Vedantics. So when you come to Jnana Yoga, that idea of a sadhya moksha, a moksha which is going to come in future, that has to be dropped. And that idea has to be converted into siddha moksha, a moksha which is always there, right? And therefore, this discussion is a very important discussion. And Shankaracharya says it is to firm your understanding of the roles of karma and jnanam in regard to, in brackets again, attainment of moksha. So there are 5 options which Shankara examines. So number 1. So I'll just briefly, also quote the Sanskrit part. The number 1 is Kim karmabhya eva kevalebhya paramshraya. Means can karma, and when we say karma here, it is Vaidika karma. So the first option is, can karma independently give moksha? Can Vaidika karma give moksha by itself is the first question. So the first option is Kevala karma, only karma. Can it give moksha or not? Then the second option is Uta vidya samvyapekshabhya. That means Uta means or, samvyapekshabhya means enhanced or supported by. So we have to supply upasana. So can, not upasana, jnanam. So can karma backed by jnanam give moksha? That's the second one. Okay. So jnanam here is called vidya also. So number 1, can karma independently give moksha? Can karma plus jnanam give moksha? Karma pradhana samuchaya, which means that karma is predominant and the backup, the secondary aspect is jnanam. So karma primary, backed up by jnanam secondary. Can it give moksha? So karma pradhana samuchaya, predominantly karma, but a combination is there, which means jnanam is also there. And the third one is it possible that through an equal combination of jnanam and karma, the second one was what? Karma predominant. So is it possible that you have equal vidya, that is jnanam and karma are combined equally, jnanam and karma are both in equal measures? Will that give moksha? The second one was karma pradhana samuchaya. The third one is karma jnana sama pradhana samuchaya. They are both there in equal measures. You can understand the fourth one. Jnanam is pradhanam and karma is supportive. So jnanam is predominant, supported by karma. So jnana pradhana samuchaya is the fourth one. And the last one is kevala jnanam, independently jnanam. So we have 5 options to be examined. What is the purpose of examining the options? Which of them can give moksha? One is kevala karma. One is karma pradhana samuchaya, karma predominant, backed up by jnanam. Third is karma and jnanam are equally predominant, sama pradhana samuchaya. Fourth one is jnanam is predominant, karma is secondary, jnana pradhana samuchaya. And the last one is only jnanam. So kevala jnanam. So it begins with kevala karma, ends with kevala jnanam. In the middle, Both are prominent. One is prominent, the other is prominent. Okay. So the topic of the discussion is what? Moksha. What is the doubt? Which of these 5 options is the best, which will give moksha? And there is a Purva Pakshi, the opposing person. He says, Kevala karma is enough to give moksha. What is his argument? He says, the study of Shastram involves study of Veda Purva as well as Veda Anta. So Karma Kanda as well as Jnana Kanda, both have to be studied. And once you do that, you are qualified for moksha. But he says that Jnanam is important, definitely. But Jnanam is not important for getting moksha. Jnanam is important to make you qualified for karma. That is his interpretation. He says Jnanam makes you qualified to do karma. So what do we say normally? Karma gives jnana yogyata. This Purva Pakshi says, no, no, no. Jnanam gives karma yogyata. You are eligible to do karma. And he quotes Manusmriti. Manusmriti is, there is a chapter number 2, verse number 165, for those who are interested. I won't quote the Sanskrit. He says, that verse says that every Vaidika should study the entire Veda along with the Upanishadic portion. So, Karma Kanda plus Jnana Kanda should be studied by every Vaidika. That is the instruction given in Manusmriti. And he says, this Jnanam which you get from there, that Atma Jnanam makes him eligible for Vaidika karma and therefore makes him eligible for marriage. As you know, there are many karmas like Agnihotram, etc., which can be done only after marriage. So his interpretation, this Purva Pakshi's interpretation is that after studying the Veda, both the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda makes you eligible for karma, makes you eligible to get married. And then you do Vaidika karma, and that Vaidika karma alone will give moksha. He says this, it is very clear that because of the way the whole thing is presented by the Veda, that Vaidika karma alone gives moksha, and Jnanam qualifies you for Vaidika karma, right? And he says, if karma cannot give moksha, then Veda has no use. Veda is meaningless. Because Veda is meant for karma, and if karma cannot give moksha, then what is the use of Veda? Veda has no prayojanam without karma. And therefore his view is that, yes, Veda instructs you to study both Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. But it is only after studying the Jnana Kanda that you have Karma Yogyata. And therefore you can get married, and therefore you can do karma. And that karma is sufficient to give you moksha. That is the purpose. And therefore Veda is very meaningful. Because if karma could not give you moksha, then the Jnana Kanda portion was useless because it doesn't make you eligible for karma. This is the view of the Purva Pakshi. From the view itself, you should know that he is a Purva Mimamsika. So we saw that Purva Mimamsika's views also in Upadesha Saram. It's the same person. Now, Shankara refutes this. He says, hey Purva Pakshi, hey Purva Mimamsika, your view is not acceptable. Why? Very simple. How does Veda present moksha? Veda presents moksha as nityam, infinite. The phalam is infinite. And he says, how can any karma, which is a finite karanam, any karma is finite, so as a cause, any karma has to be a finite cause. How can a finite karanam give you an infinite karyam? the karyam is to be moksha from karma, both have to be infinite, because karyam is infinite. Only infinite karanam should be possible to give you moksha, but that is not so. All karma is finite, and therefore it goes against logic that any finite karanam can give infinite karyam. And he points out that all the darshanas, except both these ideas. Which ideas? All darshanas say that moksha is nityam, is infinite karyam, and all darshanas say that karma is finite. Since this is uniformly acceptable across all darshanas, obviously an finite karma cannot give you infinite karyam. Therefore, your view is not correct. And this, he says, is borne out by this particular logic which we have just given. Whatever is born must die. The karma phalam is anitya. It is supported by logic also. And of course, we can add, our very experience shows that all karma phalam is finite. Whatever is born has to die. And Shankara says, yes, your statement is true that the student, the brahmachari in the Gurukula has to study both Purva Veda and Vedanta, and therefore he will have Atma Jnanam. But he says the word Jnanam here, word Vidwan, can refer to two types of Atma Jnanis. So Atma Jnanam is of two types. One is Samanya Jnanam, which is gained in Brahmacharya Ashram, and that is the general Vedic instructions. Right? So that the inquiry in Brahmacharya Ashram is of course into Brahman also, into Atma also, but the inquiry, says Shankara, is Samanya Vichar. Right? And he leaves it at that. It is called Samanya Brahma Jnanam is obtained. Right? What is Samanya Brahma Jnanam? We don't know. Right? What is the difference between Samanya Brahma Jnanam and Vishesha Brahma Jnanam? We don't know. Shankara doesn't say anything. But Anandagiri, a sub-commentator, says that in the Brahmacharya ashram, the jnanam that you get is Paroksha Brahma Jnanam. What is the meaning of Paroksha Brahma Jnanam? Anybody? We have done this several times. Yes and may.
Indirect. From an external source, perceived through one of the senses.
Yeah, so in the what they call Brahmacharya ashram, they teach you that Brahman exists, right? So you have, when you come out of the Brahmacharya ashram, you know that Brahman exists. But you have not made the connection, Aham Brahmasmi. So there is, for you, Brahman is another object, just like a tree and a ball, glass. So that is Paroksha Jnanam. And therefore the teaching, the Samanya Jnanam in Brahmacharya ashram, says Shankara, is for the purpose of the Brahmachari to know that there is such a creature as Brahman in Shastra. And what is that Brahman, he should know. But he has not jumped. He has not made the conclusion that Brahman I am, because for that, sadhana chatushtayam should be there. And for that sadhana chatushtayam, for the chitta shuddhi, he has to enter the grihastha ashram after brahmacharya. After that, he should go through all the rituals which are enjoined in the brahmacharya ashram. He should get chitta shuddhi, and later on, he should do a vishesha inquiry, and that can be done in the sannyasa ashram later on. And that in that inquiry, he will know that the Brahman whom I learnt about in my Gurukula, that Brahman is none other than I myself. And that is called Aparoksha Jnanam, or Shankara says Vishesha Jnanam. So Samanya Jnanam is Paroksha Jnanam, there exists Brahman. Vishesha Jnanam is Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. And Shankara says this aparoksa jnanam is the cause of moksha. And therefore, the argument of the Purva Pakshi that a person who has got Atma Jnanam will later have to do karma to get moksha, that argument is not correct. And Shankara quotes Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Atma va are drashtavyaha, shrotavyaha, mantavyaha, nividhyasittavyaha. Very famous quotation, which we will do when we do the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He says, Drashtavya, Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nividhyasittavya. You will know Atma only through Shrotavya, Shravanam, Mantavya, Mananam, Nididhyasittavya, Nididhyasanam. And therefore, this is the Vidhi, this is the commandment of the Shruti for Shravanam, Maranam, Nididhyasanam. So Shankara says it is well known that Jnanam obtained through Mananam and Nididhyasanam has a different nature from the Jnanam obtained through Shravanam alone. What is the Jnanam obtained through Shravanam alone? There is Brahman. You might even know that Brahman I am, but there are doubts sorted out through Mananam. So the quality is different, and Nididhyasanam sorts out the Viparita Bhavana, habitual thinking patterns. That alone ends up in Aparoksa Jnana. And therefore, Mananam and Nididhyasanam are two different sadhana. They are different from Shravanam. Now, the question can arise. If the object of Shravanam is what? Telling us that there is no difference between Jivatma and Paramatma. So, Jiva Paramatma Aikyam is the objective of Shravanam. Jiva Paramatma Aikyam is the object of Mananam. Jiva Paramatma Aikyam is the object of Nididhyasanam also. So, question can arise, why should there be three different sadhana? Okay, that's a very important thing. Why do we do SMN? Why is it that Shravanam alone is not sufficient? Or why is it that Shravanam and Mananam alone is not sufficient? So, Shankara introduces 2-3 words here which we should remember. So, there is, during Shravanam, what is it that gets eliminated? The confusion about what the Shastram says. Right? Very carefully. What is removed from my mind during Shravanam is what? If I have a confusion about what the Shastram is saying, or if I don't know what the Shastram is saying, that is removed during Shravanam. So that is called a Pramana Asambhavana. We have talked about this in Bhagavad Gita also, but fleetingly. Therefore, I will introduce that again. During Shravanam, Pramana Asambhavana is removed. Pramana Asambhavana means that I am not too sure about what Shastram is saying. Okay. Or I am a bit confused about what Shastram is saying. Shravanam removes that confusion. After Shravanam, I should be very clear what Shastram has said. Then only my Shravanam is complete. You have to be very careful about these words. I should be very clear about what Shastram is saying. That is called Pramana Asambhavana. Okay. Now, what does Shastram say? Tattvavas, in short. Right? So, one thing is, I know that Brahman says, Shastram says, you are Brahman. When I am clear about the fact that Shastram is saying that I am Brahman, when my knowledge about that fact is clear, doubtless knowledge is there about what? What Shastram is saying. Shastram is saying, you are Brahman. When my knowledge about that is complete, the Shastram says, I am Brahman, that is called Pramana Asambhavana has been removed. Nivrittihi. Pramana Asambhavana Nivrittihi is the object of Shravana. Okay. Now, when Shastram says that you are Brahman, am I convinced that I am Brahman? That is the question. This is the difference. Shastram says you are Brahman. I have no doubts now. Shastram says that I am Brahman. That message I am very clear about. But am I convinced that I am Brahman? That is the second thing. So, prameyam. Prameyam is what has been said by the pramanam. What is the object of the pramanam, right? Pramanam says that you are Brahman. And therefore, initially there will be a prameya asambhavana. How can I possibly be Brahman? That doubt is there. When that doubt is removed through constant mananam and through interacting with the teacher and interacting with my fellow students, then pramana asambhavana has been removed in the Ravanam process. Prameya asambhavana is being removed after mananam. Okay, after mananam, I am very clear that I am Brahman. After Shravanam, I was clear about what? Astram says I am Brahman. After Mananam, I am clear that Astram says I am Brahman. I am also clear that I am Brahman. That is Prameya Asambhavana Nivrittihi. Okay, so after Shravanam and Mananam, my knowledge that I am Brahman is undisputed, free of all samshaya, all doubts. But there are habitual thinking patterns which we call viparita bhavana, which prevents me from getting the benefit of that Shravanam and Manam, of that particular knowledge. And therefore, during Nididhyasanam, this viparita bhavana is removed. This habitual thinking patterns are removed. Once all three are done, my knowledge is complete. I know I am Brahman. And since each of these disciplines addresses different obstacles, so Shravanam addresses Pramana Asambhavana, Mananam addresses Prameya Asambhavana, Nididhyasanam addresses Viparita Bhavana, and therefore the three sadhanas have necessarily got to be different. And therefore he says, this Purvapakshi view that Kevala karma alone, again, Vaidika karma alone can independently give moksha. That is not true. That has been refuted over here. Okay. Now, any questions on that? It's a very, very important discussion, not found elsewhere, and therefore I took it up. Fine.
Just,
Yes, Medha.
just a side note. So the Purvapakshi is saying basically marriage becomes an eligibility criteria for moksha.
For moksha, which would have, really pained Shankaracharya. Anyway. Okay. Then the second view is there. What is the second view? Now remember that the word jnanam used in this particular discussion, the actual word used is vidya. So vidya can be translated as jnanam, but it has to be translated, actually, Shankara says that vidya has to be translated as upasana, because there are many Upanishads where there is the term vidya is used in the term upasana. And therefore, when we say karma pradhana samuchaya, it is not karma and atma jnana pradhana samuchaya, it is karma backed by upasana. So karma is predominant, upasana is secondary. And this second view is that when karma is backed up by upasana, that is to say, when karma is enhanced with upasana, then the karma phalam is not normal phalam, it is enhanced phalam. And this we have seen before. Pure karma can give Swargaloka only. Karma plus upasana, karma upasana samuchaya is required to give Brahmaloka. The punyam is more. And he gives an example. He says that normally, for example, Ayurveda considers curds as harmful. And yet, Ayurveda says that when you add something to the curds, it becomes beneficial. What is that something? Any Ayurvedics here? No. So he says that Ayurveda considers the consumption of curds as harmful, but if you add good, jaggery, then it becomes beneficial. So if you add jaggery to curds, you can consume it safely and it is beneficial effects. He says in that same way, this you add your upasana to karma, and karma, which is normally okay effect, becomes enhanced. This is the argument of the second Purvapaksha. Shankara says there is a defect in the logic, right? What is he saying? Karma enhanced by upasana produces moksha. Can you make out the defect? What should be the defect in that statement?
Limited action produces unlimited results.
Okay. Anything else? Very fundamental thing. When something is produced, what are we saying? It has got a beginning.
It has got an end also.
Whatever has got a beginning has got an end. So Shankara says this is the defect in your logic. The moment you say that karma enhanced by upasana, that samuchaya is generating the moksha, then moksha gets the defect of anityam, because whatever has got a beginning will definitely have an end. Okay, so that's Shankara's argument. Then the Purvapakshi does not give up. He says, Veda itself says that karma jnana samuchaya will produce nitya moksha. Where? We have done the Upanishad. In which Upanishad does it say that karma with upasana will give you nitya moksha? No? Kathopanishad. Right? Kathopanishad says that the person who does karma plus upasana, for that matter, Gita also, right? The person who does karma with upasana, he will go to Brahma Loka, and from there he will get Krama Mukti. So that is basically, what does it mean? It means it is moksha only. So he says, oh Vedantin, he's addressing us. Even if you forget about the logic, Kathopanishad is Shruti Vakyam. How can you say no? And here Shankara gives a very, very important answer, important for all of us. So he says, never accept Veda Vakyam blindly. It is Pramanam. Therefore, the rules of Pramanam should always be applied. What is one basic rule? One Pramanam should never be contradicted by another Pramanam. And if you say that something arising out of a finite cause is infinite, you are saying that Anitya Karanam can produce Nitya Karyam. That is a contradiction of logic. And therefore, he says, you should not accept Veda Vakyam blindly. If the Veda Vakyam, Shruti Vakyam contradicts any other Pramanam, then you have to reinterpret that Vakyam in such a manner that the contradiction is removed. Very, very important. Veda Vakyam can never contradict. And if it appears to be a contradiction, then your interpretation is wrong. Veda Vakyam, remember, cannot be proved or disproved by logic, that we are saying. But remember that Veda Vakyam cannot contradict logic. And if it is contradicting, then we have to accept that our interpretation is wrong. And therefore, you have to look for an interpretation where the contradiction is resolved. So he says Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava. Shruti Vakyam, Yukti is logic, Anubhava is experience. They must always be reconciled. In any interpretation to be valid, there should be no contradiction between Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. And this is one of the basic tasks of Mananam. Our Mananam has to consist of these tasks. Is there any contradiction between what I am hearing in Shravanam and what is there in logic and what is there in my experience? These things I must know, right? This reconciliation is the major aspect of Mananam. What is the job of Pramanam? Pramanam, Shankara says, is only Gyapakaha. Gyapaka means what? Revealer. Pramanam is only a revealer of things. And revealer of things as what? Revealer of a thing as it is. Pramanam cannot change the nature of a thing. And suppose Veda says fire is cold. It contradicts Anubhava. And will you accept that fire is cold? You will not. So Veda Vakyam, remember, cannot change the intrinsic nature, Swabhavika Dharma of anything. And therefore the Veda Vakyam's job, the Pramanam's job, is to reveal something yathartha, as it is. It is not the job of Pramanam to convert that thing into something else. Therefore Shankara says again and again, Pramanam has Gyapakatvam only, revealing power only, but does not have Karakatvam, modifying power. Pramanam can only reveal a thing as it is. It cannot modify the nature of something into something else. And to understand this, we have to remember that Karmendriyas have got Karakatvam. Karmendriyas are able to modify something into something else. But Jnanendriyas have Gyapakatvam only. Jnanendriyas cannot modify anything to anything. Jnanendriyas can only reveal to you what is the nature of the thing which you are seeing. Jnanendriyas have Gyapakatvam. Karmendriyas have only Karakatvam. And therefore he says the rule, the logical rule, Yadyat Arabdham, whatever has a beginning, Tat Anityam, that is not eternal. Yadyat Arabdham, Tat Anityam. Whatever has a beginning cannot be eternal. This rule cannot be modified by any amount of Vedavakyam. Vedavakyam cannot reveal a produced thing as eternal. And Shankara adds, even if 100 Vedavakyams tell you that moksha is is nitya, that moksha which has a beginning is nitya, or if 100 Vedavakyams tell you that whatever has a beginning will be indestructible. Arabdham avinashi bhavet. If 1,000 Vedavakyams tell you that whatever has got a beginning is indestructible, you should not accept that at all. Note that Shankara's faith in the Veda does not make him abandon logic. Therefore, the teaching is you should never, never, never give up what? Your logical mind. Your intellect should never, never be given. Okay. Any questions?
Brahmacharya.
Yes, Jyot.
So when we
You are not audible, June.
this discussion, the word upasana, we say karma and upasana.
June, you'll have
Can
to
you hear me
say it
better?
again. You'll have to say it again.
No. Okay, but now I'm audible.
You're audible now, yes.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this discussion, when we say karma plus upasana, upasana is referring to jnanam.
No. Upasana means upasana. word used in the discussion is jnanam or vidya, but it is to be interpreted as upasana, as meditation.
Okay, okay. So in the last question of the 5 questions, when we say can jnanam independently give moksha, this jnanam refers to
That
upasana?
jnanam refers to jnanam. But in the samuchaya portion,
okay.
it refers to upasana.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Right. So since this being a very, what they call involved topic, I will stop here. I would urge you to again revise this portion of the Shankaracharya's discussion, and we will take up the third view in the next class. So with this, we'll stop for today. Thank you for your patience. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience. Om Om.
Thank you, Acharya ji. Thank you.